Each week on the Million Dollar Flip Flops podcast with your host, me, Roderick, we talk with game changers and thought leaders from across the globe. These are business leaders that are leaving an indelible mark on our society, whether we realize it or not. No topic is off limits, from information to technology to just general business or even families and spirituality. Nothing is left untouched. We're not here just to scratch the surface. We're here to actually dive into the business mind of other CEOs across the globe and just have a conversation. But you get a front row seat to that every week. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If there's anything you would like to hear on your end or anyone you would recommend as a guest, please don't hesitate to reach out. Let's get to the show.
I exited a few of my businesses and it was great in the moment. And I'm still dealing with some backlash on bad agreements and bad trust. And there's obviously money involved in that. And just the way that the deal was structured, seller finance type of scenario, it just brings me into conversations that I don't want to be in. And it takes some energy that is just like, bro, like I shouldn't have to deal with this right now. But I am.
I'm not going to say that this exact scenario happened to me in the last 24 hours, but I'm going to go ahead and say that this exists. And I won't get into the details on that, just like you don't want to get into the details on yours. But I think so. What would you say the lesson is there?
Well, I mean,
for someone yet to exit, what's the lesson?
Yeah. Well, okay. There's like a couple of pieces there. One, I was motivated to exit, and anytime that you're motivated, you don't have leverage. And it wasn't because I didn't. I mean, I still have some of those franchises in other locations, and so it wasn't like I didn't want the business. It's just this particular region was a challenge for me to continue to run, and it just made sense at this moment. And this individual just couldn't do the deal without the way that we structured it. And so it all made sense, but I knew in the back of my mind that, I was tying myself to somebody and their decision making. And, that's tough because the obvious one that people want to grab onto is cynicism, which is, well, I'll just never trust anybody ever again. And I'll just, and I just can't operate like that, man. I've done multiple deals since then. And they'll probably all be just fine. Unfortunately, there's a rotten egg here or there. And I think it's just more than anything, just that humans are humans and contracts are beautiful.
We don't have to discuss this, but do you think it's malicious intent or just not paying attention on the front side?
Well, I'd say it's not paying attention in both scenarios. On the front end, I actually thought I did a pretty good job. You just don't know what you don't know until you know it. And then looking back, you're like, okay, I could have tweaked this, there, that. And it really wasn't like a terrible contract or scenario for either one of us. It just was just that the other end of the bargain just didn't get held up, really, is more than anything. And so because of those actions, then further, steps have to be taken, which is just where it's just like, dang, dude, we didn't have to do this. We could have just like executed this thing like you said you were going to, and everybody would have been fine. It would have been a win-win. But now we kind of got to get sticky because you are making bad decisions. So the paying attention on the backside too is what I have seen, and not only just in this scenario, but in even mastermind members of Gathering the Kings. It's like when you just don't pay attention enough to detail. I'm not saying that you got to be a perfectionist, but in my opinion, you can't have this large amount of success without order. And I'm not a fan of necessarily like 1, 2, 3, 4, and no flexibility. And like, it has to be the same. Like I'm not like that either, but there has to be order. And when someone doesn't operate in order, which is the example that on the other side of this situation, it's not malintent or malicious intent. He's just not operating in any order whatsoever. And it's just like this tornado, and that's the unfortunate part, going back to your 5 steps there, probably up until the philosopher, that's how that dude's operating, is just grind, hustle, tornado, and it just takes a little bit more intentionality, a little bit more order, not a little bit, a lot of bit more order. Let's just be honest. Even for the folks that are like not orderly at all, they need to put people around them that are orderly.
Right.
You
still have ownership in that one, or It's just the
It's
finance side.
yeah, it's the financing part of the agreement. Yeah, so that's my connection to that. Hopefully, with the new set of terms, that he'll start putting in the work in the right direction.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can hope. Worst case scenario, you take calculated risks. We do this as entrepreneurs. I took a calculated risk. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake, and if I don't get it, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to just be like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, no big deal. There'll be further action taken, but at the end of the day, when I signed the deal, I knew, just like when I, back in 2017, and I threw 30K into Bitcoin. It was just like,
Right.
I could never see this again. And my wife's like, "Are you serious right now?" I'm like, "Yeah, you just wait." And thank goodness that worked out. But that's how you have to do it. It's a calculated risk. It's like, what's the upside? I know there's downside. I did this thing the other day. Maybe you've done this with like a wealth planner. Like they've got this target thing that they take you through as far as like trying to understand your risk, adverseness. And he's like, "Hey, so like he did this thing, that the simulator that moved across the screen, and it was like, the number on top, the return gets bigger, but so does the risk." And he's like, "Just stop me whenever you feel that little inkling of like, ooh, a little uncomfortable." And I just didn't. He moved it all the way across. He was like, "Well, I can't. We use Culture Index, so do they." So he kind of knew a little bit of like who I was before we got on the call. He's like, "I can't say I'm shocked, but you're one of two ever to not stop me." It's like, well, for me, it's like as long as it's calculated, I can see the return, I can see the possible negative. If I've got other things going on that can cover that negative, then it's only upside, in my opinion.
Yeah. The global picture, right? I
Yeah,
was
exactly.
I was talking with a financial guy yesterday that we met out in Austin, and it was a similar conversation. And I said, I want to ask you more about that risk averse thing too, because I've heard and seen, everyone's all about the risk until the market dips 10%, and they're like, sell, 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 sell. And they freak out. But so I want to ask you about that. But I was on the phone with this guy, and I said I always ask money managers two really kind of dickish questions. I say, has any active money manager ever beaten the market over time? And two, what does a 1% fee cost me compounded over 30 years? When you answer those two questions, then we'll continue the whole rest of the spiel.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, those are both pretty easy answers from a calculated perspective. That compounding one is an interesting one. I was probably 24 with my first experience with that type of professional, and I didn't know how to articulate this at the time. Probably similar to you, just where it's like, I put $100 or $100,000 into a business. I know I'm betting on me, so I know that there's a return there and way greater than a market, but hey, cool, I'll sit down with you. Sure. Why don't you show me your stuff? And he was just offended. I was like, I'm happy. You show me yours, I show you mine. Like, isn't
Uh-huh.
this like what we
It works
learned
in all
when we were
scenarios.
teenagers? I mean, I guess not. Okay, fine. No big deal. So anyway, I work with, actually, there's a guy in our group that just does this super, super well. And he's just one of those guys that just is like, look, man, it doesn't always have to be about the market. In fact, he loves alternative stuff. We're into some equipment, this, that, and the other. I'm trying to look for write-offs at the end of the year. And he's always creative, but at the same time, he's like, look, man, like, this is how it's done. Like, here's the systematic, just don't think about it, legacy. Then here's the fun, creative stuff. It's like, yes, let's do both.
Yeah. That's been my experience. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this and that listen to your show is that I'm into cars and bikes and real estate and boats and stuff I can flip. And like, yeah, I got a 401k at Vanguard, and I've got, I get
Yeah.
it. I've got some of those protection things in place. But if you took a percentage return on anything I've done, I mean, it's in the stratosphere. It's like, I'm never going to just put, I know I can go buy a 64 Galaxy tomorrow at a good deal, throw 10 grand in my pocket. Like, it's just, and they don't understand that and that's a real
Yeah.
basic example, right? And you get into houses and stuff, obviously those numbers 10 and 100x, but it's
Yeah.
a money manager that gets that. And then the question becomes, for me at least, is, and then how are you going to help me? You going to help me find deals? Are you going to put,
Right.
then it's just your network. So am I just paying for your network?
Yeah. 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 Which in some circumstances is worth it. Unfortunately, it's like it's a blessing and a curse for guys like us, because we are smart enough to be able to break away from the masses, but we're arrogant enough to not vibrate with some things that are like working. And it's like, nah, I'm just gonna do my own thing. Like, okay, luckily it's worked out. And I say luckily loosely because it's obviously not luck. It's strategic. And sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. Like that's just how it works. You got to zoom out. I've lost a lot of money, but we've made a lot of money. Okay, fine. Like let's just keep going in that trajectory.
We had a group call with Hormozy a couple weeks back, which was
I saw
awesome.
this on Facebook, bro.
Yeah,
Tell
dude.
me
Yeah,
about this.
like an hour and a half with them, which, guy's just a legend. But it's that even when you lose, you still won because you take all of those lessons and all of that learning and everything into, as long as you don't quit. The only way you
Yeah.
lose is if you quit.
Yeah.
I was talking with Nicole about that this morning, like just so many business ideas in so many ways that things just haven't worked out, but did they not work out?
Right.
I learned something in every one, but
Yeah. Or you meet somebody or I mean, I guess you're going back to your market example, you buy, the S&P 500, just basic, whatever they're telling you. But as long as you don't sell, you don't lose. Like, I mean, there's obviously some nuance to that, but generally, same thing with real estate, same thing in business. Like, you don't want to hold on to a lemon in any endeavor, but for the most part, it's like, man, just zoom out, make a 10-year or a 20-year. I was talking to a guy on my show yesterday. He was like, we were talking about his 30-year planning process. And I don't think most people think in 10 years, let alone 30. And I'm like, dude, I'll tell you something crazy. I haven't told anybody. I should have used this earlier. I'm working on 100-year family mission. And maybe I should. And I mean, I was inspired by the guys that said he'd do 1,000-year plan. I was like, geez, I'm only thinking 100 years. You're thinking 1,000 years. Whoa. All right. Time to level up.
yeah. What's your qualifier for a business that is not working? At what point is it I need to give it time, and at what point is it this I need to change business?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I think that there's like a practical looking at it as a machine and what part of the machine, isn't working and can it be fixed? And then I think that there's like an emotional connection of like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing now? And I'll give you an example there, even in my own, like, edible arrangements as a franchise, I went 0 to 7 locations from 24 to 29 years old, 3 states, 65 employees, millions of dollars in sales. And I was that chaotic showman.
This is a
Yeah.
lot harder than they told me it was going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I think that there were pieces in that were broken that I eventually I could figure out, like for example, Valentine's Day is just extremely difficult in that franchise. Like we'd go from about 65 employees to like 450. No joke. For about 4 days, you know, finding 400 people in a 3-week period of time for 4 days worth of work is just hard. And so I could fix those things. I could get really good at those things, but then eventually came to the place where it's like, okay, I've learned a bunch. And actually, I can take these skill sets and I can get a better leverage point over here. There was nothing really wrong with this business. It's really designed for a 1 or 2 or 3 location. Most franchises are, and I had kind of broken the system with 7. And so it's like, but if I could take that same energy, that same lessons that I've learned, all the team building and sales and marketing, all this stuff, but I could apply it in this business, in this vehicle. It's more of a vehicle question. I was in a vehicle, but it wasn't going as fast as I wanted it to. So that was the decision for me. And again, I still own a few of those, but it's more of a like, okay, the same knowledge that I have, the same effort that's being put in just gets me a better return. It's just a better lever over here or over here or over here. And that's in essence what's been my personal evolution in business. But I think that's the question is, can it be fixed? Like I can think of a remodeling business that's in our portfolio. If there's a part of the sales process that's broken, we're not going to have deals. And so I could be easily frustrated with that business not making money. But that can be fixed. It's either a person or a process issue, most likely,
Yeah. What's the constraint?
Yeah, exactly.
Man, remodeling business. That's PTSD for me. I was
Oh,
custom home builder for close
that's
to
right.
15 years in Charlotte. And boy, you can learn to hate people in a hurry. And that,
Yeah. Especially in the custom world, man. We
oh
just had a
man,
custom home built. I'm sure my dude hates me.
you're with people for 2 years. Think about what happens in your life in 2 years.
Oh yeah.
And who do you take it out on when you're not in your house?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially a high moving, highly detailed individual. I'm sure he hates me, but
Yeah.
it wasn't going to be wrong. We were going to do it together. I wasn't going to let it be wrong.
Man, that I tell you that it's probably a good segue because that was a business that I probably could have, had I done it over, I would have stayed smaller. We got to where our average remodel was over $500,000 and complex historic projects and
Oh yeah.
good money. You know, you're making a lot of money in theory per project, but
Right.
had I done it again, I would have stayed smaller. Kitchens and baths, knocking them out in 6 weeks. You know, I'm in, I'm
Right.
out. It's high profit areas, and that business I just shut down. I just stopped doing it, and after putting so much blood, sweat, heart, soul, tears, the whole deal into it, you know, and people
Yeah.
ask
Wow.
why, and it was, well, what are my options? You know, I can start to hire up, take myself out of it, sell the brand, which is hard to do in a construction company until you're really big,
Yeah.
or I can start to scale down, which is an ego hit. And then, well, weren't you the guy doing the big thing? Now you're just doing this, you know? And so I was just like, I'm just not going to do it at all. And that's when I started or I ramped up the other side of the real estate company, which ended up being the short-term rentals and everything. But have you ever had
Yeah.
that experience where you just stopped?
I closed one of those 7 locations, and I wasn't forced to. You know, it wasn't like I couldn't make payroll. It was a scenario, maybe it was in the midst of COVID, where the landlord was a little bit actually, no. They were not flexible. That was not, it was before COVID. I was trying to get my wheels turning here, but I still had to pay the rent on that location. I had 2 locations in that city. I built them a year apart. They were both doing okay, but I just did the calculation. If I serviced the whole area out of one location, even though I was still paying the rent over here for another like 15 or 16 months, it was still going to be more profitable. And so,
Mm.
for whatever reason, the franchise let me do this. The landlord was not, it was the franchisor that was flexible. I just stopped. I just shut it down. It was so weird because I'm the one, back in my early 20s that like drove down there and like installed the equipment. And I was up late at night, like setting up the security cameras and, like doing the thing. It was so weird to like see it all come down. And it felt like a failure, but it was like a strategic move. It was a very weird moment, you know.
Yeah.
I'm very probably similar to yours. I mean, if you chose to stop, like that means you found a different lever point. I have new information. Now I get to make a different decision. I mean, I just think that's our journey. It's just as long as I can get data points, I can make really good decisions. I try to make the best decisions that I can. Sometimes I miss, but then I try to get more data points. Okay, great. Now let's adjust. Let's make the next decision.
How attached are you to say houses, cars, locations? And then I'm going to go have a part B to this question. But how
Yeah,
how
like
attached are you
personally.
to stuff? Yeah, whether it's a
Yeah.
business or a vehicle. Let's say we'll go
Okay.
there.
0. Like probably like over here, almost robotic or systematic. And like I've had to learn empathy really is probably what was the disconnect there on the culture index. I'm a 9 logic. And so it's like, this just doesn't make sense. Again, 7 locations of edible arrangements. That was my first kind of go at business. I don't even like fruit, bro. I don't even like fruit. I never even ate. I mean, there's a couple pieces. I like the chocolate dip strawberries, but that's about it. They're like, you don't even
You
eat
just like the chocolate.
yeah, exactly. You don't even what? I'm like, yeah, man, I just don't like. I like the widget of business. I like winning. We had a conversation with a good buddy of mine years ago. We looked at I think it was like a carpet cleaning franchise or something together. And he was like, I just don't know if I could see myself cleaning carpets every day. That thought had never even crossed my mind. You want me to clean carpets? You want me to clean toilets? You want me to cut fruit? Like it, I do not care. If it builds the thing that I'm trying to get to, then that's the target. I'm not talking about what I'm doing today. Who cares what I'm doing today? So to answer your question, gone. In fact, I just sold my truck to the remodeling company probably 4 or 5 months ago. I don't even have a car yet.
I love it.
My wife's got her van and we're just chilling. I'm just rolling in the minivan. And I I had a buddy the other day. He was like, I don't even know what to think of this. Like, are you a minimalist? Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know, man. Like maybe, I mean, I've been kind of peeping out some nice cars, but like, what do I need? I don't go anywhere. I'm here on Zoom with Coach Roderick. Like, come on, man. Like, where am I going?
I'm
Anyway,
al- I'm always curious if there's a correlation there because people make fun of me. They're like, the only thing, well, my dog passed, but the only thing Roderick could ever keep would be Nicole and Marley, and and everything else is always for sale.
yep.
I might have just bought something. Yeah, it's for sale if you're interested. And I think it's
Oh, yeah.
just the way we're wired. It's just, and the same thing with the business. It's not.
Yeah.
And what brought that up for me is you talking about being at that shop, kind of putting your own grit into the place, and where a lot of people would have an attachment to that. And I think that's where they go wrong. They stay way too long because they have an emotional attachment to the thing.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, it's interesting because we just built that home I was telling you about, and we hadn't even moved in yet. Now, the scenario, the backstory there is that we thought about building, and then we moved to South Florida. You asked about moving across the country. I moved my entire family. My son was like 3 weeks old when we moved. I'm like, hey, here we go. But we came back to Kansas City because our little project was done down there, and my wife was like, hey, I'd really like to build our family, like for real, in Kansas City. Okay, great, sounds good. So we come back and we're like, okay, we should look seriously now at building. And we build through COVID. Like, this is a long process. We hadn't even moved in. And I'm like, hey, if we sold this right now. And this is a woman who's like, look, man, you have drugged me across the country. We've been in all these different rental homes that you keep buying, and I'm just been following your lead here. I need a freaking place to settle down. And I'm like, hey, if we sold, you see how much equity we got in this sucker? Like, we just, And she's like, you better sit down.
That's
so I
it.
sat down for a little while.
That should be an episode of, me and Nicole do this partnerpreneur segment on the show. And it's just the two of us talking, but that's exactly a perfect topic to talk about, because similar scenario. I was in Charlotte and I sold, it's like the most expensive house in that neighborhood in this historic district. And I just got lucky. Like it took off in there, and I had that house and a rental down the street. And so I bought the duplex across the street, and I redid one side. I was going to live there, and I was going to rent the other side. I've never had a property where there wasn't something that was paying the bill, right? Like
Sure. Yeah.
whether I build something out back or it's some kind of Airbnb or something. And then I was like, but if I rent both sides, I can buy this townhouse that's 2 streets over, and then I'll just live there and it'll be great.
Yeah.
And so I was closing on the townhome, and I go, but if I rented the townhome, I ended up in a $600 apartment, because I was like, I'm traveling all over the world anyway. I'm never here. So I didn't end up living in any, I've got an apartment uptown. So
I love it.
but now I couldn't do that. Like, no way Nicole let me do that.
No. And I think that that's good for us. Like, I think still today, people like you and I, if we didn't have that, we would probably still be in the $600 apartment, and it's no big deal, right? But there is another piece of the puzzle. When we're talking about, again, globally, there's been, I could have run faster and probably made millions more without Julie and the kids. But then when you look at it like holistically, and you're like, well, wait a second, the person that it takes to be able to win like that with character and integrity, and the person that I would have wanted to be, I don't know if I would have been able to become that person without her and the kids. Like, it's just a huge piece. I'm sure you guys talk about this on your segment, but that marriage mastermind is a so much bigger piece than I think entrepreneurs give it credit to. I think it's like a very big, like number 2 on the list, scenario, other than, what you're putting in your own self, probably,
That is why I don't work with people typically that are in the first 2 levels. Like, if you're a believer or you're late stage showman, and the reason I say you have to have a 7 or 8 figure business isn't about, it has nothing to do with the total. It has to do with you figuring out that money is not the only answer to every problem. Yeah. And I don't know how to teach that to somebody. I think you have to learn that on your own.
It's like the 30-year, 100-year, plan. Like, I mean, maybe I'm here in 100 years. Probably not. Maybe 136. Maybe there's technology and health stuff that's happening right now. Maybe. But here's the thing: is that most likely that's going to have to be perpetuated by my children and my grandchildren, which have everything to do with me while I'm here, and then not. And so when you can think beyond individually yourself, but now I'm even thinking beyond generations, like, just put you in a place where you're like, okay, it has to be. I mean, well, first off, we need a lot of money, so we got to raise the target and really go hard. But it's not about that. It's about what is our family doing? Like, who are we impacting? What are the systems that we're setting up really supporting, just so that we can all drive fast cars and live in nice places? I don't even do that now, and I can do it. And I literally choose not to. Like, literally, like, my conversation with that tax guy the other day was like, hey, so like, if you don't find me a strategy to put some money in, I'm going to have to go buy a G-Wagon. And I don't really want to. So please, because that's the only, it's the showman thing to do when I need a tax write-off, and I don't want to do that. So help me find a different way.
That's could be the show title, Chaz. I have to buy a G-Wagon.
Yeah. I mean, that's the spot that I'm in. I'm like, dang, dude, I might have to buy a G-Wagon. Please don't make me buy a G-Wagon. I don't want one. I do want one, but I don't want one, you know?
Fortunately, I'm a classics guy. So, my
Okay.
stable right now is a 31, a 32, a 50, and then the new diesel trucks pull them around. But let's talk about your mastermind for a minute, and then I'll let you go. I know you're a busy guy, but I want to lead into it with what part of that kind of legacy building, 100-year plan, how am I impacting the people around me, is a part of Gathering the Kings?
Yeah. Well, just like with you, man, like when you can help someone see things differently. I mean, that's what Napoleon Hill says a mastermind is, right? It's you and me right now. And together, collectively, we're trying to add value to the audience and help each other even. And so unto that definite purpose, we're working in harmony and our minds come together and it creates something new. And out of this talk, someone's going to be impacted, maybe even one or both of us. And it's like when you have that perspective of my family unit, and then on top of that, then who we impact, one of your members or one of your people that you're coaching, or someone that's part of my mastermind, it's like if you can help them change their perspective based on just the room or the environment or something that you were able to share or something that they saw you do. They saw me choose not to do a G-Wagon and I chose to make an investment for my family that's going to pay me 10 and 20 years from now. And they go, whoa, that's like really impactful, dude. Like you, all the reasons in the world, even tax wise, to like buy this thing and you're not, like that's like scratch my head, perspective changes, then their life changes. His grandchildren are thinking differently because of this one thing way back in the day that he saw someone else do. Maybe I have a relationship, maybe I don't. Maybe they're listening to this podcast. It's like, ooh, when you think of the gravity or the weight of that, you're like, okay, that's what I'm freaking made for right there. I don't even know the impact, the ripple, right? But it's like when you have that as the North Star, oh, let's go.
Why I wrote the book, And what was cool was I was on your show like the day of book launch or the day before,
Yeah.
something we were in Austria,
Yeah. I
but
think you were traveling. Yeah.
and I had no idea if I would sell 5 books, if I would sell, and we ended up hitting number 1 in 7 categories. And
Love it.
there was a crazy stat that probably only you and no one else listening to this would appreciate, but I wanted to hit top 100,000 of all books. And that's 30 million books. That's Obama and the Bible and Prince Harry.
Yeah.
It's like you're literally competing. It's $100 million leads. It's everything. And we hit 15, I think it was 1563 or 1564 of all books on Amazon. And I don't share that stat with a lot of people because it doesn't make sense, right? They're like, cool, you're number 1500.
Yeah. Like,
But
good job.
huge number. But
Yeah.
the reason I wrote the book was for that one guy or gal who's going to read it someday, and one page in there that's going to make them think, and it's going to change their trajectory.
Yeah.
And that weight you talk about. I remember when I got my letter from the Library of Congress, and like my book is in the Library of Congress, and I'm like, man, 5,000 years from now, they're going to protect that place, and that $1 million flip flops is going to be there still. That and the Seaver
American
House
Republic,
in Iceland,
$1 million flip flops.
That's right. That's right. Anyway, I'm going to ask you an off the wall question, and then I'm really going to let you go.
Okay.
You've got $100,000 to invest. You're not putting it in your own business. What do you do with it right now?
There's so many questions I have around that to really make a good decision. I need more data points. The 2 things I'm looking at right now, because this is just really real, is I'm looking at equipment that can be re-rented, construction equipment, and I'm looking at oil and gas. 2 alternative ways to be able to invest money, see a return, and then also see depreciation. That's the biggest reason, though, since we've just got done talking about this. If I wasn't looking for that specific depreciation moment and I was just looking for the next thing, it would be real estate in some form or fashion. I don't know if $100,000 would get me that, but I'd probably hold on to it until I had a couple more hundos. And then I would go buy a piece of property that would be a legacy piece. So I'm kind of doing that right now. I've got a piece of property that's for sale, should be a 7-figure exit, and then a couple of pieces that are coming together. I want to go buy then the next, roll it in. That's probably what I would do, is just add to that fund.
Man, real estate is so boring.
But so perfect for
it's so
getting, I'm sure it's Grant Cardone or somebody that says, don't get rich quick, but get rich for sure. And it's like, look, I've already proven to myself and to those that are around me that I can make money, that I can exchange time for money. But if I really want my kids and my grandkids to have a family office and to be able to make decisions that impact millions of people possibly, they can't be changing active time for money. So I need to teach them more than just my sales skills, more than just my ability to build a team. It's got to be much, much bigger than that.
I think we can probably kill it there, but my friend. What people want to find you? How do they find you?
Yeah, gatheringthekings.com. That's our peer-to-peer mastermind, as you mentioned. It's a big old group of people that are grateful, but not done. There's a gratefulness of how far we've come and thankful, maybe even peaceful, as you described. But there's this innate fire in us that's like, no, it doesn't even matter how big the mountain is or that I've already climbed. There's another one. Let's go. So that's how they can reach me. I look forward to connecting with or serving anybody that's connected to you, because a friend of Roderick is a friend of mine.
Amazing. Thanks for coming on the show, bro.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you.